The wheat had turned golden under the late summer sun, and Cyrus Granger thought he was alone until he saw the crushed stalks near the eastern field and followed them to find a creature he had only glimpsed in nightmares and battlefield memories, lying motionless among his crop. She was an orc, unmistakably so, with skin the color of spring moss and two small tusks that curved upward from her lower jaw. Her breathing was shallow, her massive frame curled into itself like a wounded animal seeking warmth. Blood stained the wheat beneath her, dark and dried in some places, worryingly fresh in others. Cyrus stood there with his scythe in hand, his knuckles white around the wooden handle, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. He had left the war behind 5 years ago. He had sworn he would never raise a weapon again, never see another body broken and bleeding, never hear the sounds of pain that still sometimes woke him in the night. But this was different. This was his land, his wheat, and an orc who had no business being here. He should have walked away. He should have fetched the town guard, or at the very least, left her to whatever fate had brought her stumbling into his fields. Instead, Cyrus found himself kneeling beside her, his farmer's hands checking for wounds with a practiced efficiency that belonged to a younger version of himself, one who had worn armor and carried a sword. Her eyes opened then, and they were amber, bright and wild with fear. She tried to push herself up, gasping with pain, and Cyrus held up both hands to show he meant no harm, though he doubted she would believe him. Why would she? He was human, and humans had been killing orcs for as long as anyone could remember. "Easy," he said quietly. "You are hurt." She stared at him, her breath coming in sharp bursts that spoke of broken ribs or worse. Then she did something he never expected. She whispered, her voice rough but clear. "I had nowhere else to go." The words hit him harder than any weapon could have. He heard the desperation in them, the absolute exhaustion that comes from running until your body can carry you no further. He knew that feeling. He had felt it himself once, when the war had finally ended and he had walked home with nothing but the clothes on his back and memories he wished he could burn away. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried. He could see her gathering what remained of her strength, pushing herself up with trembling arms, but her leg buckled before she made it halfway. Cyrus caught her before she fell completely, and the weight of her nearly brought him down too. She was solid muscle, taller than him by half a head, and even injured she radiated a dangerous power that made his instincts scream warnings. But those amber eyes held no threat, only pain and something that looked like resignation. "My house is not far," he heard himself say, and wondered if he had gone mad. "I can help you there." She shook her head weakly. "They will find me. You should not." "Who will find you?" "Everyone." The word came out like a curse, heavy with meaning. Cyrus looked around his fields, at the wheat that still needed harvesting, at the sky that was already darkening toward dusk. He thought about his neighbors, about what they would say if they knew he was harboring an orc. He thought about the reasonable thing to do, the safe thing. Then he slipped his shoulder under hers and began the slow, painful walk back to his farmhouse. She lost consciousness before they reached the door. Cyrus half carried, half dragged her inside, his muscles screaming in protest, and managed to get her onto the wide bed in the room that had once belonged to his parents. It was the only bed large enough to hold her, and he tried not to think about the blood that was staining the quilt his mother had made 30 years ago. He worked by candlelight, cutting away the tattered remnants of what had once been leather armor, finding wounds that made his stomach turn. Sword cuts, arrow grazes, and burns that looked like they had come from something magical. Someone had tried very hard to kill her, and they had nearly succeeded. Cyrus cleaned the wounds with water from his well, boiled clean and cooled to warm. He used the same herbs his mother had taught him about, the ones that fought infection and helped flesh heal. His hands remembered the work even though his mind wanted to forget. He had done this before, on battlefields and in makeshift camps, for men he had called brothers, never for an orc. She woke once while he was stitching a deep cut along her ribs, and her hand shot out to grab his wrist with terrifying speed. Her grip could have broken bones, but she simply held him there, her eyes focusing slowly on his face. "Why?" she asked. Cyrus did not have a good answer. "Because you asked for help," he said finally, "and I am tired of turning away from people who need it." She studied him for a long moment, then released his wrist and let her head fall back against the pillow. "You are a fool, human." "Probably," he agreed, and went back to his stitching. By the time he finished, dawn was breaking outside, painting his fields with soft gold light. Cyrus stood at the window and watched the sunrise, feeling every one of his 32 years in his bones. He had not slept. He had not even thought about the harvest that needed to be brought in before the autumn rains came. All he could think about was the orc woman lying in his parents' bed, breathing steadily now, her wounds bound and cleaned. He should have been afraid. He should have regretted his decision. Instead, he felt something he had not felt in years, a strange sense of purpose that made his chest tight. The next few days passed in a blur of careful routine. Cyrus worked his fields in the morning, bringing in what wheat he could before the weather turned. He avoided his neighbors, making excuses when they stopped by to chat or ask for help with their own harvest. In the afternoons, he tended to his unexpected guest, changing bandages and making sure she ate the broth and bread he brought to her. She slept most of the time, her body fighting to heal itself. When she was awake, she watched him with those unsettling amber eyes, saying little but missing nothing. Cyrus found himself talking to fill the silence, telling her about the farm, about the wheat harvest, about anything except the war or why he had really decided to help her. On the fourth day, she spoke more than 2 words. "What is your name, human?" Cyrus looked up from the bandage he was unwinding from her arm. "Cyrus Granger, this is my farm. I am Rasha." She said it simply, as though the name was both a gift and a burden. "I was a warrior of the Stonefang clan." Was. Her jaw tightened, the small tusks catching the afternoon light that streamed through the window. "I am nothing now, clanless, nameless if they had their way." Cyrus had heard of clan orcs, the ones who lived in the mountains to the north and raided human settlements when the winters grew harsh. But he had also heard other stories, whispers about orcs who had refused to fight, who had been cast out for showing mercy or questioning their chiefs. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Rasha turned her face away from him, toward the window. "I refused to kill children." The chief ordered a raid on a human village. He said we would take everything, leave nothing alive. I saw the children, human children, running in fear, and I put myself between them and my clan brothers. Her voice was flat, emotionless, but Cyrus could hear the pain beneath it. "The chief called me weak, tainted by human softness. He said I had dishonored the clan and the ancestors. My own brother gave me these wounds and told me to run before they decided to make my death slow." Cyrus sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, the bandage forgotten in his hands. "You saved them, the children, some of them." "Maybe." Rasha closed her eyes. "I do not know if they survived. I only know I ran, and I kept running until I could not any more. Your wheat field was soft. I thought it would be a decent place to die." "You are not going to die," Cyrus said firmly. "Perhaps not today." She looked at him then, and there was something raw in her expression, something that looked like hope dying slowly. "But what life do I have now? I cannot return to my clan. I cannot live among humans. I am nothing, nowhere." Cyrus thought about his own exile, different but similar in its own way. He had left the war behind because he could not stomach the killing anymore, could not raise his sword knowing that the person on the other end had a family, a home, a life worth living. His fellow soldiers had called him coward. His commanding officer had let him go with a warning that men like him did not survive long in the real world. Yet here he was, 5 years later, with wheat fields and a farmhouse and a life he had built from nothing. "You can stay," he heard himself say, "until you are healed, until you figure out where you want to go." Rasha stared at him like he had just spoken in a language she did not understand. "You would let me stay, an orc, in your home?" "You have nowhere else to go," Cyrus said, echoing her own words back to her. "And I have plenty of room." She was silent for a long time, and Cyrus thought she might refuse, might tell him to leave her alone so she could die with whatever dignity she had left. Instead, she said, very quietly, "Thank you." It was the first time he had heard genuine gratitude in her voice, and it made something warm unfold in his chest. The next week brought challenges Cyrus had not anticipated. Rasha grew stronger each day, but with strength came restlessness. She could not stay in bed, could not accept being helpless, and Cyrus found her trying to do things that her body was not ready for. He caught her attempting to carry water from the well, her face pale with pain. He found her in the barn, trying to muck out the stalls despite the fact that her wounds were still healing. "You are going to tear your stitches," he said, exasperated, taking the pitchfork from her hands. "I am not a child," Rasha shot back. "I cannot lie in bed while you work yourself to exhaustion. You can and you will, at least until those ribs are healed." They glared at each other, two stubborn people who were too used to doing everything themselves. Then Rasha's shoulders sagged slightly, and she nodded, conceding the point. "I am not used to this," she admitted. "Being cared for, being weak." "You are not weak," Cyrus said. "You are healing. There is a difference." She looked at him with those amber eyes, and for the first time he saw something other than pain or wariness in them, curiosity perhaps. Or the beginning of trust. "Why did you leave the war?" she asked suddenly. "I can see it in how you move, how you tend wounds. You were a soldier." Cyrus leaned against the barn wall, the pitchfork still in his hands. He had not talked about this with anyone, not in 5 years. But something about Rasha made him want to be honest, to share the truth he usually kept locked away. "I killed a man," he said quietly. "In battle, which is what you are supposed to do, but this time I looked at his face as he died and I saw how young he was, barely old enough to grow a beard. And I thought about his mother, somewhere, who would never see her son again, about the girl who might have been waiting for him to come home." He paused, swallowing against the tightness in his throat. "I realized I had done that to dozens of people, maybe hundreds, and I could not do it anymore. So I left." Rasha was quiet for a moment. "That took courage," she said finally. "Among orcs, refusing to fight is the greatest shame, but I think it is braver than any battle. Your people cast you out for refusing to kill children. That took courage too. Perhaps we are both fools then." Cyrus smiled, a real smile that felt strange on his face. "Probably, but at least we are fools together." Something shifted between them in that moment, some invisible wall crumbling. From then on, the farmhouse felt less like a place where a human was helping an orc, and more like a home shared by two people who understood each other in ways no one else could. As autumn deepened, and the leaves turned brilliant shades of red and gold, Rasha grew stronger. She began helping with the smaller tasks, the ones that did not require heavy lifting or bending. She would shell beans while Cyrus repaired tools, or she would keep him company in the evenings, sitting by the fire and talking about everything and nothing. Cyrus learned that Rasha had a sharp sense of humor, dry and unexpected. She learned that Cyrus could cook surprisingly well, creating meals that made her close her eyes in appreciation. They fell into an easy rhythm, two people who had been alone for too long finding comfort in simple companionship. But Cyrus was not naive enough to think it could last forever. The first hint of trouble came on a crisp October morning when he went into town for supplies. The blacksmith, a man named Thomas who had always been friendly, gave him a cold look when he entered the shop. "Heard you have been keeping to yourself lately, Granger," Thomas said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Not like you." "Harvest kept me busy," Cyrus said carefully. Funny thing, though, Miller's boy swears he saw someone at your place. Big figure, not you, said it looked strange. Cyrus felt ice settle in his stomach. Miller's boy has a wild imagination. Maybe, maybe not. Thomas finally looked at him directly. "Just thought you should know people are talking. Might want to be more careful about who you have around your farm." Cyrus left the blacksmith shop with half the supplies he had come for and a growing sense of dread. If people were already suspicious, it was only a matter of time before someone came to investigate, and when they found Rasha, there would be no explaining, no reasoning. The best he could hope for was that she would have time to run. The worst did not bear thinking about. He told her that evening, sitting across from her at the dinner table. She took the news calmly, too calmly, and he knew she had been expecting this. "I will leave tonight," she said. "I have put you in enough danger." "And go where?" Cyrus demanded. "You are still not fully healed. Winter is coming. Where would you even go? Better I die in the wilderness than bring violence to your door." "That is not better. That is just you giving up." Rasha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "What would you have me do, Cyrus? Stay here and wait for them to come with torches and weapons. Watch them burn your farm and maybe you with it, all because you were kind to me." "I would have you stay," he said, standing to face her. "I would have you let me figure this out instead of running the moment things get difficult. You do not understand. Everywhere I go, death follows. It is the price of being what I am." "You are not a monster," Cyrus said, and he realized how much he meant it, how much he had come to see her not as an orc but simply as Rasha, a woman who had suffered and survived and deserved better than the world had given her. "You are someone who made a brave choice and paid for it. Just like me, and I am not letting you go out there alone." She stared at him, her expression shifting through several emotions he could not quite name. "Why do you care so much?" It was a fair question, and Cyrus did not have a simple answer. Somewhere between that first night when he had carried her bleeding into his home and now, she had become important to him. Her presence made the farmhouse feel less empty. Her laugh, rare as it was, brightened his days. The thought of her leaving, of never seeing her again, created a hollow ache in his chest that he had not felt in years. "Because you matter," he said finally. "To me. You matter to me." Rasha's breath caught, and for a moment she looked almost vulnerable. Then she shook her head. "You are a fool, Cyrus Granger. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." But there was no heat in her words, only a strange tenderness that made his heart beat faster. She did not leave that night. They sat together by the fire instead, not talking much, just existing in each other's presence. Cyrus found his eyes drawn to her profile, the strong lines of her face, the way the firelight brought out the deeper green tones in her skin. She was beautiful, he realized, in a way he had never allowed himself to notice before. When he looked up, he found her watching him too, her amber eyes reflecting the flames. "This is dangerous," she said softly. "What we are doing, I know. They will not understand, either of our people." "I know that too." "Then why?" Cyrus reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took her hand. Her skin was warm, her palm calloused from years of wielding weapons. Her fingers were longer than his, tipped with nails that could be claws if she wanted them to be. But they curled around his gently, carefully, as though she was afraid of breaking him. "Because some things are worth the danger," he said. Rasha looked at their joined hands for a long moment. Then she lifted his hand to her lips and pressed a surprisingly soft kiss to his knuckles. "You are the strangest human I have ever met. I will take that as a compliment." They stayed like that until the fire burned low, holding hands and stealing glances at each other like nervous children. When Rasha finally went to bed in the room that had become hers, Cyrus lay awake in his own room, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of the feelings churning in his chest. He had not wanted to care about anyone again. Caring meant vulnerability, meant giving someone the power to hurt you. But Rasha had slipped past his defenses without even trying, and now he could not imagine his life without her in it. The trouble he had been dreading arrived 3 days later, in the form of a town guard named Marcus and 2 of his men. Cyrus saw them coming up the road and had just enough time to warn Rasha to hide in the cellar before they knocked on his door. "Granger," Marcus said, not bothering with pleasantries. "We have had reports of suspicious activity on your property. Mind if we take a look around?" "What kind of suspicious activity?" Cyrus asked, blocking the doorway with his body. Strange figure lurking about. "Non-human, according to witnesses. Probably a deer. I've had problems with them getting into the wheat." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Big deer, apparently. Big enough to look like it was walking on 2 legs. Cyrus forced himself to stay calm to keep his expression neutral. "I do not know what people think they saw, but I have been alone here since harvest. You are welcome to look around the farm if you want, but you will not find anything." It was a calculated risk. If they searched thoroughly, they would find the cellar and Rasha in it. But if he refused to let them search, they would know for certain he was hiding something. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "We will take a quick look, just to put people's minds at ease." Cyrus watched, his heart pounding as the guards walked through his house, opening doors and checking rooms. They went to the barn, poked around the chicken coop, even checked the well. But they did not think to check the cellar, hidden as it was beneath a rug in the kitchen. After what felt like an eternity, Marcus returned to the front porch. "Looks clean," he admitted. "But I would be careful, Granger. People are nervous these days. There have been orc sightings in the mountains, talk of raids. They see shadows and think monsters." "I will keep my eyes open," Cyrus said, trying to keep the relief out of his voice. After they left, he waited a full hour before letting Rasha out of the cellar. She emerged looking shaken, her eyes wide. "They were looking for me," she said. "They were looking for orcs in general." "They do not know you are here specifically." "Not yet, but they will come back, Cyrus, and next time they might be more thorough." He knew she was right. They had bought some time, but not much. Sooner or later someone would see something, or Marcus would decide to search more carefully, and then it would all be over. "We need a plan," he said. "A real one." They spent the evening discussing options, none of them good. Rasha could hide in the forest during the day, but winter was coming and she would freeze. They could try to leave together, but where would they go? Every human settlement would see her as a threat, and every orc clan would see her as an outcast. "There might be one place," Rasha said hesitantly. "Far to the west, near the coast. I heard stories of a settlement where humans and orcs live together, a place where outcasts and refugees can find sanctuary. But I do not know if it truly exists or if it is just a legend." "How far west?" "Months of travel. Through territory that is dangerous for both of us." Cyrus thought about his farm, the land he had worked so hard to build into something productive. He thought about leaving it all behind, walking away from the only home he had known. Then he looked at Rasha, at the hope and fear warring in her amber eyes, and he knew there was really no choice at all. "Then we go west," he said. "Cyrus, you cannot just abandon your home for me. Watch me. This is insane. You do not even know if this place exists." "No," he agreed. "But I know that staying here means one of us will die, or we will have to spend the rest of our lives hiding. And I am tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. If there is even a chance that we can find somewhere to be together without looking over our shoulders, I want to take it." Rasha stood and crossed to him, taking his face in her large hands. Her touch was gentle despite her strength, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones. "You are the best person I have ever known," she said softly. "Human or orc, and I do not deserve you." "You are wrong about that," Cyrus said, covering her hands with his own. "You deserve everything good in this world, and I intend to help you find it." She kissed him then, leaning down to press her lips to his. Her tusks were careful against his face, her mouth warm and surprisingly soft. Cyrus kissed her back, pouring everything he felt into that moment, all the fear and hope and desperate affection that had been building between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rasher rested her forehead against his. "We are really doing this. Running away together like characters in some romantic tale, apparently so. They will call us both mad, probably." Cyrus smiled. "But I think I am all right with that." They spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the journey. Cyrus sold what he could discreetly, trading tools and preserved food for supplies they would need on the road. He told his neighbors he was thinking about visiting family in the south, establishing a reason for his absence that would not raise immediate suspicion. Rasha stayed hidden, working on getting her strength back to full, exercising in the barn and practicing with a staff Cyrus made for her. At night, they would sit together and plan their route, spreading out the old maps Cyrus had kept from his soldier days. They would have to avoid major roads and towns, sticking to forest paths and wilderness. It would be dangerous, cold, and exhausting, but they would be together. On their last night at the farm, Cyrus stood in the doorway of his house and looked out at the fields he had planted and harvested for 5 years. He had thought this place would be his forever, his refuge from a violent world. Instead, it had become a different kind of sanctuary, the place where he had found something he thought he had lost the right to want: love. He loved Rasha. The realization had crept up on him gradually, in small moments and quiet conversations, until it was simply a truth he could not deny. He loved her strength and her vulnerability, her humor and her pain. He loved the way she challenged him and the way she trusted him. He loved her not despite what she was, but because of all of it, every part that made her Rasha. Having second thoughts. Her voice came from behind him, low and understanding. "No," Cyrus said honestly, "just saying goodbye." She moved to stand beside him, her shoulder brushing his. "I am sorry you have to leave this behind." "I am not. This place was just wood and dirt and crops. What matters is the life you build, the people you share it with." He looked at her, taking in her profile against the starlit sky. "You are my life now, Rasha. Wherever we go, that is home." She turned to him with eyes that shone with unshed tears. "I love you, Cyrus Granger. I did not think I could love anyone after what my clan did to me, after I lost everything. But you made me feel like I could be whole again, like I could be more than just a weapon or a mistake." "I love you too," Cyrus said, and the words felt right, felt true in a way that nothing else ever had. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." They left before dawn, 2 figures moving quietly through the morning mist. Cyrus had packed everything they could carry on their backs, abandoning the rest. He left a letter for the landlord who owned the property, saying he had been called away and would not be returning. It was not much of an explanation, but it would have to do. The first week of travel was harder than Cyrus had anticipated. They moved slowly, avoiding roads and settlements, sleeping rough in the forest. The weather turned cold and rainy, making every step miserable. Rasha's wounds, mostly healed, still troubled her when the temperature dropped. Cyrus found himself wishing for his warm farmhouse and comfortable bed. But then Rasha would smile at him across their campfire, or take his hand as they walked through difficult terrain, and he would remember why he was doing this, why it was worth it. They encountered their first real danger 2 weeks into the journey. A group of bandits, 4 men who saw Rasha and immediately drew weapons. Cyrus tried to talk them down, but they were not interested in conversation. They saw an orc and a lone human, and they thought they had found easy prey. They were wrong. Rasha moved with a speed that still surprised Cyrus, her staff becoming a blur as she disarmed the first bandit and knocked him senseless. Cyrus, his soldier training coming back despite his reluctance, took down another with a well-placed punch. The remaining 2 bandits looked at each other, then at Rasha standing over their unconscious companions, and wisely decided to run. When the fight was over, Cyrus found himself breathing hard, his knuckles bleeding from where they had connected with the bandit's jaw. Rasha checked him over anxiously, her hands gentle as she examined his injuries. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" she asked. "Just my pride. I am out of practice. You fought well, fought to protect both of us." She kissed his scraped knuckles. "Thank you. Always," Cyrus promised. They left the bandits behind and moved deeper into the wilderness, always heading west. As the weeks passed, they fell into a rhythm. Cyrus hunted small game while Rasha gathered edible plants and set up camp. They took turns keeping watch at night, trusting each other with their lives in a way that felt natural and right. They also grew closer in other ways. Stolen kisses became longer, more heated. Touches became bolder. One night, with the fire burning low and the stars bright overhead, they made love for the first time, learning each other's bodies with careful reverence. Rasha was worried about hurting him with her strength, but Cyrus showed her that he was not as fragile as she feared. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, warm despite the cold night air, and Cyrus thought he had never been happier. "You think it truly exists?" Rasha asked quietly, her head resting on his chest. "This sanctuary we are searching for?" "I do not know," Cyrus admitted. "But even if it does not, we will find somewhere. We will make our own sanctuary if we have to. Just the 2 of us against the world, if that is what it takes." Rasha lifted her head to look at him, her amber eyes serious. "You have given up everything for me. Your home, your safety, your place in the world. What if I am not worth it?" Cyrus cupped her face in his hands, making sure she could see the truth in his expression. "You are worth it. You are worth everything, and I did not give up anything that mattered. I chose you, Rasha. I will always choose you." She kissed him then, deep and passionate, and they stopped talking for a while. Winter came early that year, bringing snow and freezing temperatures. Cyrus and Rasha found shelter in an abandoned hunter's cabin, staying there for a month while the worst of the storms passed. It was cramped and cold, but they made it work, huddling together for warmth and telling each other stories to pass the time. Rasha told Cyrus about her childhood in the clan, about the mother who had taught her to fight, and the father who had told her stories of orc heroes. She spoke of the pride she had felt when she first earned her warrior marks, and the shame that had come when she realized what being a warrior truly meant. Cyrus told Rasha about his own family, about the farm he had grown up on and the parents who had died of fever when he was 16. He talked about joining the army because he had nothing else, and the slow realization that war was not glory but just organized slaughter dressed up in patriotic words. They learned each other's fears and dreams, their regrets and hopes. And with each story shared, each vulnerability revealed, they grew closer. When spring finally came, melting the snow and bringing new life to the forest, they continued west. The journey was easier now, with warmer weather and more available food. They met other travelers occasionally, and Cyrus learned to introduce Rasha as his wife, a story that became easier to believe the more he said it, because that was what they were, in all the ways that mattered. They had not had a ceremony or spoken vows before witnesses, but they were bound to each other more surely than any legal document could accomplish. 3 months into their journey, they finally heard concrete news about the settlement. A merchant traveling east told them about a place called Haven's Rest, a coastal town where the local lord had declared sanctuary for anyone, regardless of race or origin. Humans, orcs, elves, and even the occasional dwarf lived there together, building something new. "It is real," Rasha said that night, her voice full of wonder. "It actually exists." "Then we keep going," Cyrus said. "We are almost there." The last leg of the journey took another month, but when they finally crested the hill and saw the ocean spreading out before them, with a small town nestled against the coastline, Cyrus felt tears prick his eyes. They had made it. Haven's Rest was everything the merchant had promised and more. It was smaller than Cyrus had expected, maybe 200 people total, but there was a sense of community here that he had not felt anywhere else. Humans walked alongside orcs in the market. Children of mixed heritage played in the streets without fear. The local lord, a woman named Alina who had lost her own family to the wars, had created a place where the old hatreds did not matter. Cyrus and Rasha found a small house on the edge of town, near enough to be part of the community, but with enough space for privacy. Cyrus started working as a farmhand, using his skills to help grow food for the settlement. Rasha joined the town guard, her warrior training making her a natural fit, and earned respect for her fairness and strength. It was not perfect. There were still people who looked at them with suspicion, who muttered about humans and orcs not belonging together. But for the first time since leaving his farm, Cyrus felt like he could breathe freely, like he did not have to hide or apologize for loving Rasha. One evening, 6 months after arriving in Haven's Rest, Cyrus took Rasha down to the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the waves rolled in with a soothing rhythm. "I have been thinking," he said, taking her hand, "about what you said back when we first decided to leave, about us running away like characters in a romantic tale. I remember. Well, I think every good tale needs a proper ending, or in our case, a beginning." Rasha looked confused until Cyrus knelt in the sand, still holding her hand. Her eyes went wide, understanding dawning. "We are already bound in every way that matters," Cyrus said, "but I want to make it official. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours for as long as we both live. Rasha, will you marry me?" For a moment she just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then she laughed, a sound of pure joy, and pulled him to his feet. "Yes, you fool. Yes, of course I will marry you." They were married a month later in a ceremony on the beach with the whole town in attendance. Alina herself officiated, speaking words about love transcending boundaries and building bridges instead of walls. Cyrus wore his best clothes, which were not much, and Rasha wore a simple dress that one of the town's seamstresses had made for her, green fabric that complemented her skin. When Alina pronounced them married and told Cyrus he could kiss his bride, he did so with enthusiasm, dipping Rasha back in a move that made the crowd laugh and cheer. She kissed him back just as passionately, her tusks careful against his face, her arms strong around his waist. "I love you, wife," Cyrus whispered against her lips. "I love you, husband," Rasha whispered back. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and more food than Cyrus had seen in months. He danced with Rasha, both of them clumsy but happy, and he thought about how far they had come from that day in the wheat field. She had whispered that she had nowhere else to go, and he had given her a place. But in doing so, she had given him something far more valuable. She had given him purpose, given him love, given him a reason to believe that the world could be better than the violence and hatred he had known. As the party wound down and they walked back to their little house, hand in hand, Cyrus looked up at the stars and felt grateful. Grateful for the chance to start over, grateful for a woman who had changed his life, grateful for a town that let them be who they were without apology. They made love that night as husband and wife, and it felt different somehow, more profound. Rasha was gentle and fierce by turns, and Cyrus met her passion with his own, both of them celebrating not just their bodies but the commitment they had made. Afterwards, as Rasha slept curled against his side, Cyrus stayed awake a little longer, thinking about the future. They had talked about building a bigger house, maybe starting a farm of their own outside town. Rasha had mentioned wanting children someday, though she was not sure if it was even possible for humans and orcs to have offspring together. Cyrus did not know either, but he was willing to try. Willing to build whatever life they could, one day at a time. Spring turned to summer, and summer to autumn. Cyrus and Rasha settled into married life with surprising ease, learning each other's habits and rhythms. They had arguments, of course, usually about small things like whose turn it was to do dishes or whether they could afford to buy the new plow Cyrus wanted. But they always made up quickly, neither of them willing to let anger fester. Elena approached them one day with an interesting proposition. The settlement needed to expand its farmland, and she wanted to know if Cyrus would be willing to manage a new farm on the outskirts of town. It would mean hard work and long hours, but it would also mean land of their own, a chance to build something lasting. Cyrus discussed it with Rasha that evening, and she was enthusiastic. "You miss farming," she said. "I can see it in your eyes whenever you talk about crops and soil. This would be good for you, for us. It would mean less time together, at least during planting and harvest seasons." "I know. But I can help when I am not on guard duty. We would be building something together, Cyrus, our own legacy." He kissed her soft and sweet. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I was beginning to worry." They accepted Elena's offer, and by the following spring, they had cleared land and planted their first crop. It was hard work, harder than Cyrus remembered, but it felt good to have his hands in the soil again, to watch things grow from seeds into something sustaining. Rasha proved to be a natural farmer, her strength making quick work of tasks that would have taken Cyrus twice as long. She learned about crop rotation and pest control, about when to water and when to let the earth rest. Working side by side in the fields, dirt under their nails and sun on their faces, Cyrus felt a contentment he had never known before. The first harvest was modest but successful. They threw a celebration, inviting the whole town to share in the food they had grown. It felt right, felt like they were truly part of something larger than themselves. That winter, Rasha discovered she was pregnant. The news shocked them both. Neither had really believed it was possible, despite their hopes. But the town's healer confirmed it, examining Rasha and declaring that, yes, she was definitely carrying a child. Cyrus felt dizzy with joy and terror in equal measure. A child. They were going to be parents. He was going to be a father. "Are you happy?" Rasha asked quietly, watching his face for clues to his feelings. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Cyrus said, taking her hands. "I am terrified and thrilled and completely overwhelmed, but yes, I am happy. Are you?" Rasha's smile was radiant, I never thought I would have this. A home, a husband, a child. My clan would have said I threw away my honor, but I have never felt more honored in my life. To be loved by you, to carry your child, that is honor enough for me." They held each other for a long time, both thinking about the future and all the challenges it would bring. A half-human, half-orc child would face difficulties, would have to navigate two worlds that did not always understand each other. But here, in Haven's Rest, their child would have a chance, would have parents who loved each other and a community that accepted them. The pregnancy was not easy. Rasha's body was made for fighting, not carrying a child, and there were complications. She was sick often in the beginning and tired in a way that frustrated her warrior's spirit. Cyrus took over most of the heavy farm work, insisting she rest even when she protested. "I am not fragile," she would say. "I know. But you are carrying our child, and I will not risk either of you." As her belly swelled with their growing baby, Cyrus found himself falling in love with her all over again. She was beautiful like this, strong and soft at the same time, her hand resting protectively over the life they had created together. He talked to the baby sometimes when Rasha was sleeping, his hand on her stomach, telling their child about the world they would enter. He promised to be a good father, to teach them everything he knew about growing things and treating people with kindness. He promised to protect them from anyone who would judge them for being different. "You are going to be an amazing father," Rasha said one night, catching him mid-conversation with her belly. "Our child is lucky to have you. They are lucky to have both of us." The baby came in early spring, born on a night when storms raged outside and the whole house seemed to shake with thunder. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Cyrus feared he might lose them both. But Rasha was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and when their daughter finally entered the world with a piercing cry, Cyrus wept with relief. She was perfect. Small, at least compared to full-blooded orc babies, with skin that was a lighter green than her mother's and tiny tusks that would grow more prominent with age. She had Cyrus's brown eyes and Rasha's pointed ears, a beautiful blend of both her parents. "What should we name her?" Rasha asked, exhausted but glowing with happiness. Cyrus thought about all the people who had helped them get here, all the chances they had taken and the faith they had kept. "Hope," he said. "I want to name her Hope, because that is what she is. Proof that we can build something better than the hatred that drove us both away from our old lives." "Hope Granger," Rasha said, testing the name. "I like it. Our little Hope." The baby squirmed in her arms, making small noises, and both parents laughed with pure joy. Raising Hope proved to be both harder and more wonderful than either of them had imagined. She was a curious child, always getting into things, always asking questions. She had her mother's strength and her father's gentleness, a combination that made her popular with the other children in Haven's Rest. There were difficult moments, times when other children said cruel things about her appearance or asked why she looked different. But Hope had been raised with love and confidence, and she met those challenges with a strength that made both her parents proud. Cyrus taught her to read and write, to understand the cycles of planting and harvest. Rasha taught her to defend herself, to stand tall and never apologize for who she was. Together, they raised a daughter who was kind and strong, curious and brave. When Hope was 5, Rasha became pregnant again. This time it was easier, her body knowing what to do. They had a son, smaller than Hope had been but healthy and loud. They named him Cadden after Cyrus's father, and he grew to be gentle and thoughtful, always watching and learning. The farm prospered over the years. Cyrus and Rasha expanded their land, hired help during busy seasons, and became one of the main suppliers of grain for Haven's Rest. They were respected in the community, seen as an example of what could be achieved when different people worked together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cyrus took Rasha back to the beach where he had proposed. The children were with Alina, who doted on them like a grandmother, giving their parents a rare evening alone. "You ever regret it?" Cyrus asked as they walked along the shore, hand in hand. "Leaving your clan, coming with me, all of it." Rasha stopped and turned to face him, her amber eyes serious. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything, Cyrus. A home, a family, a life worth living. I was nothing when you found me bleeding in your wheat field. You could have left me there to die, but you chose to see me as a person worth saving. How could I ever regret that?" "You saved me too," Cyrus said. "I was so lonely before you came. I did not even realize how much until you were there, making my empty house feel like a home." "We saved each other then." "Yes, we did." They kissed as the sun set behind them, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ruins of their old lives. Years passed. Hope grew into a strong young woman who wanted to be a healer, fascinated by the work of helping people. Cadden showed a talent for diplomacy, often mediating disputes between the children in town and showing wisdom beyond his years. Cyrus and Rasha watched their children grow with pride and occasional fear, knowing that the world beyond Haven's Rest was not always kind to those who were different. But they had given their children the tools they needed: love, confidence, and the knowledge that they came from two people who had refused to let the world's hatred define them. On a warm summer evening, when Cyrus was in his 50s and Rasha's hair was beginning to show streaks of gray, they sat on the porch of their farmhouse and watched the sunset. Hope was in town, working with the healer. Cadden was reading inside, absorbed in one of his many books. "We did all right, did we not?" Cyrus said, taking Rasha's hand. "We did more than all right. We built something worth having. I love you. After all these years, I still love you as much as I did that first night when you whispered that you had nowhere else to go." Rasha smiled, squeezing his hand. "And I love you, you stubborn, wonderful fool. Thank you for giving me somewhere to go. Thank you for giving me everything." They sat together in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, two people who had defied expectations and created their own destiny. They had been given every reason to fail, every obstacle designed to keep them apart. But they had chosen love over fear, hope over hatred, and in doing so, they had built not just a life but a legacy. Their children would carry that legacy forward, teaching their own children that love knows no boundaries, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, and that sometimes the best things in life come from the choices that everyone else says are impossible. Cyrus looked at the woman beside him, his wife of so many years, the mother of his children and the love of his life. She was looking back at him with the same affection, the same deep connection that had sustained them through every challenge. "What are you thinking?" Rasha asked. "That I would do it all again. Every moment, every hardship, every mile we walked, I would do it all again just to end up here with you." "So would I, my love. So would I." As night settled over their farm, over the town that had become their home, over the life they had built together, Cyrus and Rasha Granger sat hand in hand, content in the knowledge that they had found what so many spend their whole lives searching for. They had found home. They had found family. They had found love that transcended every barrier the world tried to place between them. And that, in the end, was everything.